Welcome back to JOJ. It's November 21st.
Good job, you got that.
I know. Sunday before Thanksgiving. It's exciting. Thanksgiving's almost here. And then it's officially Christmas time. Really?
Yeah.
Now my set's probably uneven.
It's fine.
So we are on our second topic of our main word, which is omni.
What does omni mean?
It means all and universally. It means everywhere.
Yep.
Omniscience is this week's word.
Pretty sure I said it wrong the first go around.
Probably, but it's all right.
So it is a noun.
Thank you.
Infinite knowledge, the quality or attribute of fully knowing all things, an attribute of God.
For this week, we'll the Bible verses, we've got a couple that we'll share with y'all.
Yep.
The first one is Jeremiah 1:5, and it's, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about this a little bit first and then do the other? Or you want me to go ahead and do the other one?
So go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
It's 1 John 3:19 and 20. This is how we know that we belong to the truth and how we set our hearts at rest in His presence. If our hearts condemn us, we know that God is greater than our hearts and He knows everything.
Unfortunately, sometimes.
Yes.
He knows everything.
He knows everything. And He'll condemn your heart.
Yeah, no doubt. And there's sometimes there's a lot of comfort in that He knows everything.
Yep.
That is definitely a scary at times and a very thankful at times to know God does know everything. And that is definitely an attribute that only God does have. When I look at God's omniscience in our lives, I really look at just how, you can take just our relationship, how we got to, from our lives prior to Jefferson County High School, 10th grade?
Yeah, that's when we met.
Was when we met. How, if you just look at that journey that both of us had to go on,
mine was more of a journey. Yours was just
yours was
Knoxville to Jeff County.
Yeah, but how yours was more of a journey to get. But all the pieces that fell into place, and just so quickly go through a little bit of. Even your mom's lineage and your dad's lineage to get.
Yeah. So and it was funny because we were talking with Parker about it the other day, because he was asking where my mom and dad were born, and I was like, well, my dad was born in Michigan, and in Lizzie's words, wow, I have Michigan blood in me or something. Is what she said.
That's what she always likes to reference.
And my mom was born in Kentucky, so obviously Michigan, Kentucky. They met in Florida, where they both were living at the time at a bowling alley, but they were both either, I can't remember if they were in bowling leagues. There's a story. I think my dad filled in for somebody.
That sounds right.
On the team or something, and my mom did not. She was like, he was obnoxious. But obviously, God knew it worked. They got married. So we grew up in Florida, and then when I was 10, my grandparents came up here, visited, fell in love with Gatlinburg, moved up to Kodak. So we would come up here for vacation. My parents loved it at the time. My dad was working for Home Depot and got a transfer here, which ended up being in East Knoxville. So he worked at that Home Depot, and we were trying to buy a house in Kodak, and I'll never forget, because we went and visited the school and everything, but our house, it was in the process of being built, and when the inspector came, there was 2 or 3 foundational things that did not pass, and so we had to step back, live with my grandparents for a few months.
And this would have been Sevier County.
Yes, so I would have been in Sevier County, wouldn't have even been Jefferson County. And so we ended up, they bought a house, and we were Jeff County, barely Jeff County. We were on the Sevier County line. Yeah. But that's what got us to Jeff County schools. And so that's kind of how I got there. And then we ended up in the same English class in 10th grade.
Yeah. But and that was, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of little things that, our mom and dad Sevier County, Jefferson County.
Yeah.
They were both pretty good school systems, you know. I mean, it wasn't like
one was better than the other.
We don't want to go that Jeff County, or we don't want to go Sevier. You know, neither one really mattered. You know, so that was it was neat. And one story I think of too, like for you all leaving Florida, the straw that finally broke the camel's back with that. You all loved it up here, you know, when you'd come on those trips and stuff. But there was something in your all's neighborhood, like with a neighbor or something, a really bad situation.
I mean, literally the girl next door got drug out of her house by a gang, and they beat her up pretty bad in the street. And, you know, my dad and other neighbors and everybody, you know, went out there and ran them off. But yeah, that was
kind of the straw that broke the camel's back to say, okay, we're moving out of Florida and going to go all the way to
Tennessee,
and end up being Jefferson County, Tennessee. You know, where it wasn't planned to be even from the start. But you know, those little things like that, where God can divert a plan to where that builder was building a sorry house.
Yeah, I don't know who that was, but we didn't buy it.
But they didn't buy that sorry house that they were supposed to buy, to end up living over there off of Sockless, and end up going to
I went to Dandridge Elementary, then Maury.
And then Maury, and then to Jefferson County, which is obviously where we met. And for me, technically, just kind of full disclaimer, we lived in Knox County my whole life. I was born in Knox County, lived in Knox County, but Dad didn't like Knox County schools. So we were going to go to Jefferson County, so much so that at one point in time, you just had to own a piece of property in Jefferson County. So he bought a little lot. Well, that lasted for a few years, and then it's like, well, you have to have a residence. So he bought an office where my mom ended up having her real estate office to use as an address.
He was determined to keep them in Jefferson County.
He was going to keep us in Jefferson County.
He wasn't going to move to Jeff County.
No, we were going to live where we lived, but we were going to go to Jefferson County School one way or another. So, so there was a lot of steps on our end. It may have been a little bit easier path. Wasn't a lot of moving around and stuff, but yeah, that kept us, you know, got us into Jefferson County Schools, which is obviously where I was supposed to be to meet the love of my life.
Oh, so sweet.
But just those little things like that you can look back at and see God's hand in, and I think it's so neat once you've come through, you know, whether it's a good thing or bad thing, or just your life, you know, to be able to look back 10, 15, 20 years and see those little things that fell into place, and it's like, wow, there's no way a person could have orchestrated, you know, all that. It takes somebody who is the one being who is all knowing to be able to see how that would work out. So, Jeremiah, I just want to read that one again to kind of emphasize that at this point. Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart and appointed you as a prophet to the nations. I don't hardly see us as being prophets to the nations. But,
I hope not.
But especially
if you have to use big words.
But especially the first line of that. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And that all-knowing of God goes all the way back to before our parents ever knew us. You know, before anybody else ever possibly knew us at all. God knew us. He knew everything that we'd ever do, knew every hair we'd have on our head, and kind of like we said at the beginning. Yeah. There's comfort in that. But
well, and I think too, like even, you know, with both of us, you know, obviously God knew He wanted us together. He knew we were going to have these 3 children, and, you know, and someday be doing this, which I would have never imagined. You know, but too, it's, you know, being young kids when we met, like we had to overcome ourselves, mostly me, overcome ourselves to actually get to this point. Like, I feel like just, you know, because we were young, I mean, you know, the devil tried everything and anything to just not make this happen. And then we've kind of, once we were married, you know, as we've gotten older, learned that, you know, we have to protect us and, you know, just in general. Because it goes back to, you know, He knows our hearts, and He knows that, you know, good or bad, anything that's going on. And so if we're not,
Yeah.
trusting in him that he knows better, was trying to get there,
Yeah.
and that his plan and his will are what's best for us. And and unfortunately, I think that it's hard to have that when you're younger.
Yeah.
Like, we see that with our kids, with their friends. Like, to them, they've got the whole time, like that they can.
Yeah. It doesn't matter if they slip up here, slip up there. That they feel as though, as all kids do at that age, that they've got enough time to make it right, or this doesn't really matter. It's not going to affect me long term. That type of thing. Which is, it's obviously where I feel most of us, at that age, that's kind of what we felt.
Which I think was what goes back to this verse, is where he condemns us in our hearts to try to bring us back. And, hey, this is not, because we could have so easily just been like, nope, I'm going down, I'm doing this, I don't want to do this. And then we wouldn't have had any of this. So it's just kind of, like you said, it's good and bad.
yeah, absolutely. Because that's, as believers, we still make mistakes. There's still, times that we slip up and do things that we shouldn't do, and as you grow in your faith too, there was a point in time where we didn't have the convictions that we have now. Where it was like, well, some things that we looked at then as not, maybe not being a sin, that now for us we're convicted by them, so we don't do whatever that is, and so we can look back at that and say, well, that wasn't really the best choice at this point in time. Even though we were believers, even though we were making some of the right steps, we were also making some wrong ones along the way. But that's where our heart may have condemned us a little bit at the time, but it definitely got to the point to where it was a conviction enough that we were like, we need to lay that down, whatever that is, and move away from it. So, I think that's that all-knowingness of God, that once you fully grip that you see that there's times it's good, and there's times when you realize you got to see things a little bit more through His lens.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Well, I think that wrap it up. You want to read that one again? Just finish with that verse again, and we'll wrap it up.
1 John 3:19 and 20. This is how we know that we belong to the truth, and how we set our hearts at rest in His presence. If our hearts condemn us, we know that God is greater than our hearts, and He knows everything.
He does know everything. So, thank y'all for watching. Come back next week. It will be post-Thanksgiving. The camera may add 10 pounds next week. Come back, and we'll cover our final Omni word for the month.